Disclaimer: the information, statements, comments, and opinions provided in this podcast are general in nature and the resources have been cited. None of the authors, contributors, or anyone else connected with this podcast in any way whatsoever can be responsible for your use of the information contained herein. User discretion is advised.
You are listening to Jenny Clark at Awakened Souls on Spotify.
Where you been? I really, really wanna know. Where you been? I really, really wanna know. Where you been? I really, really wanna know. Where you been, girl? This ain't no mystery, don't want no ancient.
Race 2 is an album from Eon MC and The Libra. Get it now. Hey. In today's episode, we bring you Ginette Lucas. She is recognized for her forensic psychic work on police and FBI true crime cases. She is a trained Dowser Intuitive and former US Virginia Private Investigator. She uses her abilities from Synesthesia, Dowsing, and Clairvoyance to help clients to resolve problems. Ginette is internationally known for working on treasure hunting, missing people, locating missing objects and animals, and finding oil and water wells, all of this successfully. Ginette's father, Louis Matacia, was a renowned dowser and served the military and US government in that capacity. Her abilities were tested by the Smithsonian Magazine in their January 1996 issue. Ginette has received media coverage from CNN, Nancy Grace, NBC Fox, Japanese TV NHK, a Washington Post, LA Times, Al Jazzeera, and other international media. Ginette has been hired by both families, police, and the FBI on locating missing people, which included two high-profile true crime cases, the Chandra Levy Case in Washington, D.C., and the Casey Anthony case in Orlando, Florida. Additionally, she is known for finding buried treasure remotely or on site. Let's bring out Ginette.
Hello, Jeanette. Thank you for joining us on Awakened Souls and coming on the show. It feels very serendipitous to me, actually. And could you start by sharing with our listeners your childhood experiences and how it began for you?
How the paranormal began for me? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so I just have to interject that my father is a very famous dowser. I assume you know what dowsing is? Water dowsing?
Yes.
All right, so just to interject who he is, he designed dowsing to help with locating booby traps and bombs for the federal government, the US military, and different federal agencies. Took the pendulum or the L rod, which is a tool for dowsing, and he said, oh, I can find a tunnel this way for the Vietnam War, or I can find booby traps or bombs for the Vietnam War. So he trained a bunch of people. I was about 7 when this happened at our house in Falls Church, Virginia. And when he did, people, the military and the Joint Chiefs of Staff were there, and they got a little confused about the process. So when I was 7, he had my brother come outside and show them, like, oh, he was trying to imply, this is so easy, a child can do it. So let me have you watch a child, because apparently they might have been intimidated by him. And so he had my brother show how to use the L rods and the pendulum. Can you hear me okay?
You are listening to Jenny Clark at Awakened Souls on Spotify or wherever you're listening to our podcast. Every week we will bring you stories, conspiracy theories, and pearls of spiritual wisdom. We will talk about everything from ghosts and hauntings, shamanic teachings and crystal healings, angels and demons to tarot in the occult. If there is anything you want to share or want us to cover, DM us on Awakened Souls at Anchor FM or email us at teamawakendsouls @gmail.com. Namaste.
So they listened to that, but they were still a little confused about how dowsing works to locate water or the booby traps and bombs or the underground tunnels. So I was watching from upstairs at our house, and I wanted to get involved. So I ran down there and I said, this is how you do it. You go from point A to point B, or you find point B. And then if you want, you can also find point C, but it's all based on your questions. So if you leave point A and say, show me, show me, show me, a word I use, which will be in my book, which I'm writing. And I found out recently that show me, or triple words in a row are very good for, it's a form of quantum physics. Not quite sure how that works because I'm not a physicist. But if you say in the paranormal, show me, or whatever, let's say it's show me the jewelry, or jewelry, or show me the water in threes. For some reason, it strengthens the receptivity.
Wow.
At any rate, so we tried that technique, and I said, let's go from point A, and then we followed the L rods to where it took me, and then I said, now I want you to show me where the water in a creek is located.
Ah. If you can explain what dowsing means for my listeners, that would be great.
Let me tell them ABC. All right. So basically, when you stand there, when you stand there for dowsing, that would be point A, and then point B to. But if you want to find something extra, you go to point C or point D. So let's talk about dowsing. Dowsing is a tool and a method to locate an item. And it could be a missing pet, missing horse. I work on buried treasure cases. I work on true crime, so it's missing persons. And so dowsing, what happens is it's an energy going through your body, and it pulsates through your fingers, and it makes the tool react yes, no, bad, good, dead, alive, that kind of thing, depending on your questions. So let's say you have what's called a pendulum, and pendulums can be on strings, which I don't prefer. I prefer the chain, or a piece of metal or gold or silver. It's a chain, and then you have a little ball or a crystal or an item on the bottom of the chain. And what that does, when you ask the question, it will give you a reaction, and that's called dowsing. So here's the historical factor. What happened in, I guess, the 16th century was a man on the street, and he kept saying to himself, I wish I could have some water. And he was very thirsty. And the next thing you know, he looked down at his stick, and he felt this funny pull on his stick. And when he did, he kept following the stick and went to a certain spot and removed the dirt. And when he did, he found a little water water popped up, and it was fresh water. Back then, it's fresh water, clean water. It's called potable water. A potable water is drinkable water. And so he drank from it, and he was so impressed. He told the king about it, and the king goes, oh my God, you're going to help our community with locating water. I'm going to name it after you, sir. What's your name? And he said, Dowsing. So it's a very weird name. So if it was Mr. Smith's tools, whatever. So it's pretty funny, but so I just want to tell people, dowsing can help with anything. So you're in India. So let's say you want to grow the best vegetables or fruit. You can have earth that is best for the fruit or vegetables. The L rod will take you to a certain spot, making it a short point to get there. They'll say, oh, you want to plant your plants right here. Now you can do a test run and plant them in that area, and then you do a test run and say, this is a bad area for my plants, and you plant plants there, and you'll see that the plants in the area where the dowsing takes you to is going to be the better site, and the plants that are in the area where the pendulum is saying, or the L rod is saying, this is a bad area, most likely those plants are going to be So you can actually
Oh,
see you can see on what's going to happen when you actually apply the technique or the method. So it's excellent visually, because people are really funny. You know how they are. They want to
yeah.
see proof that American cliche, proof of the pudding. They want to see it. So that's what we do with dowsing, but we use it for crime work, true crime, to locate
Yeah.
missing people. And I do buried treasure work. And for some reason with buried treasure, it's easier to find gold, metal, silver, digs. It's much easier to find that than paper items. I mean, I have found paper items, but I'm also a remote viewer, so because you can't guarantee you're going to find whatever the person's looking for, because dowsing is it's um it's a magnetic pull, and you have to get used to that magnetic. So basically, I got used to 7, and I guess when I was I would almost say 5th grade, I went along with my father to Maryland, where he was teaching at a community college, and he was talking about dowsing and the psychic and the paranormal, sort of a broad spectrum of the paranormal, or the umbrella of the paranormal. And when he was there, he spent the night in Maryland, and at midnight I woke him up, and I said, "Oh my God, Dad, I had this terrible nightmare. This kidnapped and killed over at this." And so he said, "Go ahead and draw up what you saw, and we'll see what happens." Well, the morning, we were staying at a friend of his house, and she was a local psychic in town, and she'd gotten a call from a local police officer, and he said, "Listen, I need your help. We have a missing kid in town, and I think you could help me out." She said, "Well, it just so happened I have this young kid psychic. He had a dream about the whole thing last night. So let's see what." And she drew pictures of everything. So yeah, I'm a little bit. I don't want to say I'm weird. I'm just very different. Some of us are born with amazing. I mean, you had in India, you had the most famous mathematician in the world who had dreams, or he was given information on how to do physics or something. I mean, you guys are much more aware of the whole gambit, and I think
Yes,
that
I
I
would
think
agree.
I mean, you're a whole different ball game than America. America, but the receptivity when it comes to dreams, you're at like 75% believe in dreams and dream prediction. When it comes to yeah, you do. I mean, you guys are so open to it. You're familiar with it, and you know that
Yes,
these unusual plus all the different deities that came into it, it certainly makes you think, okay, we know we're not alone. We know that there's lots of things out there. But anyway, back to my, sidestep back to my my dreams. The police officer came out in Maryland, and it was Frederick. I mentioned I was in 5th grade, so I'm going to say around 11. I don't know.
mhm.
I drew up the pictures, gave it to the cop, and he goes, "Are you serious?" And what? And I told him the full story of all the information I received while I was in a dream state. And I want to say something as a sidebar to this situation. You have to remember, I was already in the house of a person who was psychic, and I could swear that there's some kind of connection. Like I'm talking to you, Jenny.
Yeah,
You've got to be intuitive. That's going to
I
increase
am.
my. Yeah, there you go. Then the people you're around are going to come, and vice versa. And then we have,
Exactly.
a lot of people. I call it also the triangle. So my father is in that. There's a little triangle, and it's almost like a wave can come through the triangle and increase the receptivity to whoever picked up the information. And so I'm
Yes.
sure I have a term for that. I'm not sure, but I call it the triangle. And basically, so if I'm around 3 people, or I give a lecture, try to pull the people that are the most intuitive, um, to explain things better. Um, so on that particular case, what was so interesting is I said, "Oh, it's a man But what's wrong is he is a son of a man who has 5 kids. They live in a small trailer park. They're at the dead end of the trailer park. And I said, the kid, I mean, the dream was just like a movie to me. And so this was my first real true crime case. And I said, the kid, and I see an apple orchard. If it's not an apple orchard, and this is where I tell people, cover your CYA, cover your beep beep. Because what happens is it could be a peach. See a bunch of trees, but they're all fruit related. It's wine, because wine trees are what's the word? They're sort of snaky. These trees were just like a bearing tree, so I knew it was apple or oranges or maybe peaches or something.
Okay.
So I described all that, and I said the other boy lives on the other side of the apple fruit farm, and he sick or disabled mentally or disabled developmentally. And I said, but he's a big boy. I said, so you know how some kids are bigger than others, like the size of an adult, but yet you're 10 or 12. And I said, I hate to say this, but he killed him. And he said, what? I said, he killed the kid. And he said, how do you know that? I said, killing the kid accidentally, they have a fight. And I said, the just doesn't realize, he knows he hurt him because he saw blood. So he runs home and tells his mom and brother, the kid, please come help me, whatever. And they hid the body. They could never find the body, but the kid never came back. And the story I gave of the kid living in a trailer park, and one of, I think I said 4 boys and 1 girl. I gave very specifics, like Caucasian. I said it's a trailer park where the trailer, if it's not white, it's like light yellow, almost white.
How old were you, if I can interrupt here? How old were you when you made these predictions?
I think I was 10 or 12. I was in elementary school. But again, I was at the benefit of 2 other psychics being around me. The triangle effect was very, very helpful. And it's like a radio show or TV show. The antennas, and you can pick up things much faster.
Yes, the vibration rises when you have
absolutely.
people in the. Yes.
Yeah, I knew you would understand. Actually, I think factor. But what amazes me is that a lot of people are saying, "Oh no, it's not the vibration." I thought, that is crazy. It's the vibration. It's absolutely the vibration.
Exactly.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
But what was most interesting about that particular case, not just that I could get all the details, but what I liked the most was I drew a picture of a square house. I said, we have to go here first. And the cop goes, where? And a picture that I had already previously drawn. And I drew a picture of a house, a U-shaped driveway. And I'm sure you've seen these kinds of homes before. And in the middle of the driveway is 1 tree, and the house was made out of stone. So it was like a house 1700s, but it was very square looking, and it was only 2, and it had a hip roof, which is a very specific roof. And I said, the stone is white and brown, or light and white brown, a little bit of yellow. So it probably had granite in it. And I said, there's no garage, but I see cars. Once we go here, we can move on and go to the trailer park. Well, the cop saw the picture, and I thought he was, gonna. I said, what? Did I do something wrong? Because, you're a kid, and you see these reactions, and you're not sure exactly what's going on. And he goes, that's my house. I said, what? And I really got it, but we did have to first. And he goes, take your picture that you drew and put it next to this house. And it was the same exact house. I mean, it was a hip roof. It was square, and it had the windows, as I mentioned, and it had a U-shaped driveway, only 1 tree on the property, which was really weird. He said he had cleared it off like a year before and took down all the trees except for this in this circle. And I was just really blown away by how he did that. And
oh my God.
That was my first wow factor, I guess. That was one of my first wow factors.
Absolutely.
But, but I think you probably felt the same way. it's like writing a book. You just do it. And I don't know how to explain it another way, except for you just do it, you get it out there, and you say, this is what I'm perceiving, and here's the information. Does it work? And yes or no, or they don't want to talk to you at all, or they do want to talk to you. So it's
That is a beautiful your reminiscence. So, what is your main source of guidance, would you say, for the psychic work you do for your clients?
I don't have one major source. If let's say you called me and you asked me some personal questions about yourself, which we can do that. If you called me and I can't pick up information, so let's say I just can't get data in my brain, because our brains are like little computers, and I use colors, and I also found out a few years ago that I have a capability called synesthesia. Do you know what that is?
If you could explain it for my listeners, please.
Sure. So it's called synesthesia. So it's SYNESTHIA, synesthesia, and it's an ability only 4% of the world has, and it's an ability to see numbers, visually. Like, let's say I'm talking to you, the number 4, and then above it I got the number 7. So I have to figure out why these numbers are important. So then I ask more questions and I get more numbers. Now I also
You got 4 to
apply.
7 right now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Why is that?
Yeah, yes, because both those numbers are important to me.
Okay.
4 because my birth number is 22, and 4 always somehow came into my life, and 7 is my lucky number. Yeah.
There you go. So four was low. Okay, and then the 7 was high. So the 4 is coming in for some reason, and then I'm being told September. So I'll say September, the second week of September. So I've got a calendar right here. So you're going to ask me a question. Okay, so I'm going to just give you an example of, you said, what's my source? So my sources are everything across the board. I have psychic ability. I have remote viewing ability. I had 4 near deaths. We'll talk about that in a minute because I don't want to overwhelm your listeners. I have dream work. Can't pick up information on you, which I got lucky because, again, the vibration is higher, so the antenna and the receptivity is stronger. And so I go to September. So for you, important. Okay, so I'm actually hearing save the date. So hold on, let's see what September's going to be like. So it's really fun to go to late August, but September was the key month I went to right away. All right. And for some reason, I go to the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th of September. And I see you. So now I'm going to a vision. So I get visions, which is clairvoyance. And I juggle the clairvoyance and I say, okay, show me, what is she doing? And it shows you with marbles. Now, marbles are symbolic. Okay, so you're playing with the marbles and you're like, okay, what do I do with this? I think it has to do with your book. Are you writing a second book?
Yes, and I work with crystals, so the marbles are significant.
Yeah, and I bet the marbles are crystals, because smooth, or are they refined?
They are both. They're both.
Okay, so it's telling you. Okay, so I just got shown a green one. It could be malachite. Malachite, but it's for some reason it's really important. So then I pull up malachite and say, what is malachite for? So for some reason, okay, so I see you. Okay, so you're very capable. Shows that. Do you use there's also a term where you can use a pen, and I'll have to figure out the name of that ability.
Automatic writing.
There you go. Thank you.
To automatic writing, yeah.
Okay, because I saw you playing with your hand. I was like, what is she doing? And I was like, oh, it's automatic handwriting. Not too many people do that these days, though.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people can try, but I think it's an innate talent. So you do it?
Yes, I do. Most of my writing is automatic writing.
Okay. Well, I call it cheating because when I write my book, as I sit there and write it, I'm actually having a person stand next to me, an invisible person, and they tell me what to write. So it's sort of cheating for me.
I
So
channel.
yeah. So you're channeling the automatic handwriting, which is phenomenal. I mean, that is such a rarity. I found it hard, very hard. It's better to talk to the other side and let them give me information.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but we all have abilities. We just have to focus in on which one works. Some people have any abilities. Well, if you stood next to me and said, "Oh, you have an ability," and then I have to tell you which one, tell them which books I recommend them picking up and buying, or focusing in on the dream work, because the dream work is really good. Hold on one second. I have a naughty kitty. She just when I do a radio show, they just have to get involved. Stop it, kitty. She's gonna tear everything up. Okay, so I use everything. I do not do the writing. I just find it just so hard. So I'm going to compliment you. That's pretty impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Can you share your theory about reincarnation?
Do you want me to tell you one of my experiences with reincarnation? Would that help?
Yes, I actually wanted to ask you about your 4 near-death experiences and the OBE that you had.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah.
Gosh, I'm going to make it short so people don't get too bored. So I was in an accident when I was around 7, and I was sliced across the head, and of course blood was everywhere because the blood comes out a lot more. And it was pretty painful, and I was with my siblings, and my siblings put me to bed because my babysitter was there for the night, and she really wasn't paying attention to our needs. And when I went to bed, I started, I don't want to say dozing off, but either going into a theta state or another state. And when I did, I closed my eyes, and again, I'm in massive pain, and the blood's going down my face. And one of my sisters gave me a warm rag, and I look up and I hear noise coming from the hall. I saw a man come in, and it was a minister. And of course, kids can see things just like animals. They can see the invisible items that adults sometimes can't see. The man came in the room and he said, "I am your real father." And he goes, "You were reincarnated from me, from my past life, from your past life, and your mother's coming." But he was definitely in a minister outfit. He had on the black robe going all the way to the floor, and he said, "I'm going to show you where you're from in China." So he took me. So I closed my eyes, and I literally thought I was going to die because he came in the room in a form of authority of a missionary type person, and I thought, "Oh my God, I'm going to die because this man in a priest's outfit or minister's outfit is here." And he goes, "Hold my hand." So I held his hand. He also said he was going to heal me, which was really interesting. And he took me to China, and he took me to a place on top of a hill, and he said, "You used to live here, but you were killed here." And I was a little girl, and he said, I don't remember all the details, except for I remember a war broke out in China, and I remember him giving me a bunch of details about the reincarnation, that they were American missionaries, and that they were teaching Christian religion, and that when this war broke out, we were in a like a fort. I want to call it a fort, but it was they weren't brick walls; they were stone walls. And I remember I remember the roofs being funky looking. So of course that Chinese look where they're sort of dipped and very, very pretty architecturally. And so I did take that information and I did look it up, and I found out there were wars in the early 1900s in China, and the new Chinese regime came in and they were killing all the missionaries. And he said, you live here, you'll know when you get here. So I assume I'm going to go to China one day eventually and see this place. And I pulled up the time frame of the war. So I wrote it down one day, and I found out there were 4 missionaries from America that went to China, and only one was on the top of a hill. And I remember being, when I first moved to the top of the hill from a past life, I had to ride on a donkey because the only way to get there, of course, they didn't really have vehicles, were not really abundant in China. And so I was riding on a donkey, and I got to the top of the hill, and they're like, oh, you're going to live here now, and you're going to play with other little Chinese children and so forth. So he explained that one. And then I got to meet my mother, and he said, your real father, God, is going to come meet you. But I don't remember the meeting itself. I do remember the past life information, and he did tell me about some other past life information, and he said, you'll need to know this. And I said, okay. What I thought was really interesting about this past life information was that he said, your whole life is going to change again. And I thought to myself, what am I going to die? The first thing in your mind, it goes a second. You think the worst. I said, okay, so what happens at 27? You'll see, but at 27, your whole life will change. And you will know, because there is a woman author by the name of Shirley MacLaine, and she's going to write a book, and this is going to be the link to your future. And as goofy as it sounds, so he was giving me predictions about my past life, and he was giving me predictions about my future life. And Shirley MacLaine she could pass for a sister to my mother. They were so similar in looks. Of course, Shirley was quite attractive. But so I knew who she was even when I was 7, because Shirley MacLaine was a large actress in the sense of, everybody knew who she was when I was 7.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so at 27, Shirley MacLaine wrote the book Out on a Limb. Okay, and it was all about the paranormal. Okay, at 27
too, but I never got around to write it. I mean, listen to it or read about it. Yeah,
it's actually not a bad book. It gives you the plethora of all the different things going on in her life as she's trying to awaken herself to everything paranormal. And she went from one extreme, UFO, all the way to out-of-body experiences, to near-death experiences, and so forth. And she was actually from Arlington, Virginia, and I lived in the town next to it. I lived in Arlington and Falls Church, Virginia, which again, here's that vibe. But what was interesting was at 27, I had another near-death experience, and I was taken to the hospital with like 104 temperature, and I didn't know how sick I was, and I went to the ER. They said, you're really sick, we're going to put you in the hospital. And I guess I came out of a coma, I don't know, 10 days later. And during that time frame, I had a near-death experience. And I do remember the nurses coming in and the doctors coming in saying I was their little miracle patient. My kidneys had collapsed. Apparently, I had a kidney infection. Some of your organs can fail and you just don't feel it or know it. You just have a fever. You say you don't feel good. So I tell everybody, listen, pay attention to your body, and you're not going to have these bad experiences because they're not a lot of fun. So at 27, I was in the hospital, and I into the heavens. It was a little bit more in depth. It did talk about my past life, and it talked about I do have a past life in India. I know that. I've had a real connection to India since I was a little girl. My best friend in first grade was a girl named Indira from India, and I always hung out with Indira, and I don't know why. It just felt so familiar, I guess.
Yeah.
But what happened? What was it?
Like that?
Yes, I think that's the thing about the paranormal. You talk to somebody or listen to somebody, and you go, I swear to God, I know her from somewhere. And people stop me and say, and they hear my voice and they go, "Don't I know you?" And I said, "No, no." And they sometimes they do ask me, "You ever been on TV?" "Oh yeah, yeah." And they go, and then some people I don't want to get to know. They go, "You ever been on TV?" And I said, "No." So you have to stay a little guarded and create those boundaries. But what was interesting about the near death at 27 was I was introduced to the fact that I had a Russian life. I don't remember too much from that because apparently it was sort of dark. They showed me my grandmother from Japan in a previous life, and they introduced me to my grandfather from a previous life in Japan, and they showed me I died at age 6 and I was learning to write. I was dead. So I'm going to say most likely it could have been Hiroshima. Of course, it could have been something, I died of a sickness with my parents. And they also told me that my father in this life was my grandfather from my last life. So I thought that was super interesting. I'm sure you've interviewed a lot of people with near deaths. They're all different. I never walked up and met a jury or a table of people analyzing me or assessing me, or you do that. I didn't have that experience. I went into heaven. I did not have a tunnel. All of a sudden I was there and I saw people in clothing that looked like they were in Greece, or white clothing or Roman clothing. And they were all really nice. And they said, "You need to come over here." So there was a group of people to my right. It was like a large line. And people were people that were not going to come back to Earth. They weren't experiencing near death. They were experiencing death. And I get over in the left line and go over there. And when I got into that line, a man was in front of me. They told me he was a doctor with white hair. And I would see more of him coming up down the road. And he had a death. And then I got to meet God, and God said, "What do you want to know from me?" And I apologized for some of the stuff I did when I was younger. And he said, "That's okay. That's okay." He kept saying it was all right. It was all right. And then I said,
about the hype solve. Can you share a little about the forensic psychic work on the Chandra Levy case and the Casey Anthony cases?
Do you have anything in particular you want to know about the true crime work? I mean, about those two cases, like how it happened or how it fell in my lap?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I mean, again, I'll try to do it short and sweet. On the Chandra Levy case, baby. So a friend of mine said, "I've been calling you. I want to talk to you about this case in DC. Have you seen anything about it?" Well, you know how it is when you have a child or a family situation going on. Your focus is them and not the TV and not the news. So I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "I have an FBI here, and he wants to meet you and go over this big case." And I said, "Bring him to my house, and I'll get my dad too." And I said, "What are you looking for?" And they go, "We're looking for her body." And I said, "Okay." So the came out to my house with the community leader. I lived in Springfield, Virginia, which is about 15 minutes from DC. And they came in, they were from DC, so they came to my house and they said, "We want you to find out where her body is." And I said, "Oh, well, actually, this one's really easy." So I'll give you a couple of tips on this one. I think the easiest way crime is to use landmarks around the person or their remains. So in India, for example, you have, is it the king's, what do you call it? The palace with the beautiful water pond and all that. What is it called?
Taj Mahal? You're talking about, or you're talking about the Red Fort? We have a lot of palaces here, and we have the Mysore Palace in the south of India.
Well, let's just use that as an example. Just at one of the palaces and so forth. Hold on, the kitty cat. It's not the kitty cat.
We have
Getting in the way here.
We have
Okay, so you have a lot of palaces. So I would say the first thing in my head was, so let's say you were working on something in India, you see the palace, you know the remains are near the palace. Well, the was a park in DC, because I was from DC, the Northern Virginia, DC area. And I said, I see this park, and it's called the Rock Creek Parkway. And then the next vision, and that's what I tell people, you go vision to vision to vision. So you go point A, point B, point C, point D. So I went to point A, which was my house, and I said, I see myself in a park, and it's Rock Creek Park. So you label it. And then I said, the next step is I see police or a police department. And so that's where I see the remains. And I said, but I'm being told there's 2 apartments in Rock Creek Parkway, which I didn't know there were. There were 2. And he said, really, which one? And I said, I see the butt of a horse. And I said, so it's got to be where the horses are. And you walk down the hill from where the horses are. You go east, and you go down into the creek bed, and she's in the creek bed. And I gave a bunch of details. I said, I think it's a MS-13 connection, because I see a Hispanic, and I see a guy who had some training from MS-13 or education or an awareness from MS-13. And I said, he hog-tied her and used barbed wire and put it around her. And I said, the problem is when you go to search for remains, sorry, my kitty is causing protected. So when you search for the remains, I want you to look for a person who is half the size. So if she's 5'7", which I thought she was 5'5", you're only looking for half the size of that person in the bed, looking for a full-on 5'7" person. And I said, it will look like trash in the water. But what happened was within a few days of me pinpointing the location, the cops called out 300 rookies, and they walked across that creek bed from the police station where the horses were, through the water and across the pond, across the creek bed. But here's the problem. When they walked across the creek bed, they dislodged the body. The body came up. They never saw it. They didn't pay attention to the detail. They didn't turn around. And 3 days later, so they gave up. 3 days later, a man was walking his dog in that particular area, and he said, I think I see a body floating in the creek bed. And that's where she was found. And the fun thing that I did do was the man that I did the location work with, and he and I recently last year did a radio show together, and he told me that asked me about other casework, and about 5 of them, and he said everything she said was on the money. Now, I'm not saying I'm always right, but again, I think the compatibility with the vibration was there, and because he was sitting there, my father was sitting there, the FBI agent was receptive, and which I think, again, that open door policy of I'll hear it. I think that's why I was on the money, because they wanted to really know where she was. It had been 2 years, I believe, trying to find her, and they couldn't find her. So that gives you a general idea. Did you have any specifics you wanted to ask about the Chandra Levy case?
And that was what I wanted to know, how you went about helping and how interesting it was. It sounds so interesting, in fact.
Well,
yeah.
They don't always want they don't pay. The FBI does not pay. Some police departments pay to be at home, had the baby, and it was my time to rest. What was really interesting, and my favorite part about that particular case, is I kept having dreams that I was in Anacostia. About the car tag, and the car tag was a certain color, and so this guy is not very tall. I think he's a previous rapist, and he's escalated to homicide. He has his trophies of women's clothing in the top drawer of his dresser. I believe he lives on the second floor, right next door to a gas. All of this information was recorded, so I still have the tape. Leader, FBI agent. And that's really important. Always get a receipt. They won't give you a letter of reference, but you can go on a that we're there as a witness and use that as I'm doing this or I'm doing that to prove, because as a psychic, and you're very paranormal oriented, have have to have credibility for everything. You have to prove, and that way people believe you. So we're gonna put the field, put everything on paper, put everything in name, and always create your boundaries with people, because if it gets to be too much, you're going to have problems with the people problems with some of my clients, and I've learned that I just gave too much, and it's better to go ahead, get in, do your and get out, and then if they need you, make another appointment and so forth. So that's
You're right about that, about boundaries, but I have it a lot.
are you weak in that area?
Sometimes, because I'm more of a giver, so my energy.
What is your horoscope sign?
Aquarius.
Okay, so Aquarius, I think Aquarius is phenomenal. I think that Aquarius is very faithful to God or their religion. I've noticed Aquarius gets a lot of jealousy. I hate to tell you that, but you need to watch out. I mean, I don't, you're very cute and very pretty, but people see the outside of you, they don't see the inside of you. So there's a form of competitiveness with you. So you have to be very careful. And I know this sounds silly, but I've noticed with Aquarians, people either love you, but it's not really hate, it's more jealousy.
You're so right, bang on.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible because I have a daughter who's an Aquarian, and I've met a lot of Aquarian women, and I said to myself, why do people not like her? She's so nice. There's no excuse for a judgment call. There just isn't. So anyway, let's move on. So that gives you a general idea about the Chandra Levy case. They did find it. They found the body. They confirmed I was right, and I did a radio show to follow up with the community leader. That's what I did and who I was with and so forth. And I will tell you too, listen to your inner voice, because whatever's going on with that, I was told to do a radio show with my friend, the community leader, before he died. I kept hearing he's going to die, and I thought that sounds crazy. Radio show, and he died about a month later. So I tell people, you've got to get on it. Do not procrastinate in the paranormal field. It's a funny field. If they say, I want you to do this now, of course, something crazy, that could be the wrong person at the wrong time from the other side. You have to pay attention and say, oh, if this is bad news, like go shoot up a crowd, of course you don't go do that. But if it's to help, because that's what I believe we're here for, and that's why they're on the other side helping us help, then it's all good news.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
And I'm sorry to say this, but you Aquarians get beat up more than I do by far. I hate to tell you, get ready, because I think it's just going to get it. We're just going to have to try to deal with it and come back and compliment people, because they're judgmental. It's tragic. But anyway, so if you want to sidebar and go over to the Anthony case, I had already worked, just in case you want to know, I had already worked on like 23 cases and been successful. The Levy case, Casey Anthony case, the letters, I didn't much about it. Somebody called me and said that they'd gone to my dad, and my dad said, I don't do, my daughter does it. Go to her. A man called me and asked me to help out, and at the same time, I had 2 kids in elementary school, and I didn't want to take myself or my time away from my kids too much, paying attention to the news too much, so I wasn't following the Casey Anthony case. And I'm not trying to say I'm bad about not being up on social media and that kind of thing. It's just that sometimes we get sidetracked with important things. So I got a call to work on the case, and I told them right away, I said, she's down the street next to an abandoned house. And I said, she's deceased. And they kept saying to me, no, that's not true. And over whether she was alive or dead. And I said, she's deceased. And the people that called me just didn't want to hear it. They determined that that's not the case. They even came to my house, not the family, and the guy said he was a FBI agent. Honestly, to this day, I remember FBI. I tried to make some phone calls on the details. I can't FBI, but then again, he may not be on the roster to give information. So I mean, who knows? I mean, he could have been just saying that, get some assistance from the psychic world. So it was sort of it was sort of a, if you understand what I'm saying, it was such a mess of a case because they didn't want to believe what I said, and eventually, I mean, what, May or June or whatever the time frame was, and I kept saying, no, she's down the street. Well, every time they called, they said that can't be location or another location or another location. And they would say, oh, we believe the kid was abducted by drug dealers and they're making all these things. And I said, no, Casey's doing her own drug scenario, her own fish in the water, doing her own little world. And, whoever's telling you that drug dealers have taken the kid and all that, I would have seen other people being involved. And I see a lot of bar hopping, and I don't, a child. So, so you have a 50% give and take, but on a particular case, they're a mess. So eventually, I guess I didn't know about this, but the telephone man said he smelled a dead body and told the cops, and the cops blew it off. So then, so I was talking to the court and the PI on the case with the Anthonys. I said, listen, you guys don't want to believe me. Let's do this. Let's use my dream work. So send me something of the child, animal or a teddy bear or something you can send me, and I'll use my dream double check the work. So I was mailed a teddy bear, which is also called it's a form of clairvoyance where you touch the teddy bear and it increases the vibration from the child. And so I fell asleep that night, had a dream exactly where she was and a bunch of details. So the next day I called the police, and I didn't get a phone call back. So I guess it took another day or two for them to finally call me back. And I said, okay, I'm going to show you exactly where she is from my house to down there. So I was in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. He was on the phone with me, and I said, I want you to leave the house and take a right. Take a right again. It's a house on the corner. The grass is very, very high. And I said, go behind the house. I said, go to a point where you see 3 pavers, and pavers are rocks that are flat to create a patio. And I said, you're not looking for the body near the pavers, but the body is closer to the pavers. So keep going. So go to the backyard. I said, first thing you want to do is take a stick and stick it next to the garden next to the house. If you don't get a response right there with a stick, when I say stick, it's a rebarb, you stick it in next to the house. There might be some evidence right there. And I said, if the stick just keeps piercing the earth, there's nothing there. Because typically if a body is in the earth and you take a piece of rebarb, stick it in the earth, if something is in the garden, the rebarb will stop. It'll stop the rebarb, and you know to dig right there. But it didn't. So I said, okay, keep going to the 3 pavers, and I see invisibly her sitting on the side of the street, but in the woods. And but I don't quite understand that. Apparently, what happened was when it floods, the area has so much water it pushes the body parts out, or push the skeleton thing, and then animals attack what's left and try to eat whatever they can. Because I said she was put in 2 laundry bags, like a white laundry bag and then another white laundry bag. And I said, that's what you're looking for, but it's no longer white. It looks like a bunch of trash, laying out there. And because the animals had gotten a hold of the bag and the smell, you're going to see her past the pavers. But this interesting thing, I think, a couple of things that were interesting. I said, I see a little white dog, and I see a suburban. Well, I found out a month later because they weren't really helpful. Um, the name of the street was Suburb. How about that?
That's incredible. Wow.
I was just so disappointed. If I say to you, I see suburban, you have to think outside of the box, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you would know. You say, wait a minute. She said the word suburban. I know there's a suburban street down the street. There's a house on the corner, as I mentioned, a house on the corner that was abandoned and a foreclosure. The grass was like at least 2 or 3 feet tall. Okay, put 2 and 2 together. Suburban house, duh. It's a little disturbing when people don't put out the effort or pay attention to the details.
That was like perfect on the money to the direction that. Wow.
It was really me before, and I've ignored some of the information. And it's not that I to ignore it. I just thought that can't be. That's so simple. I can't believe I'm getting that. And I'm sure you've had those kind of circumstances where you say, "Oh, I'm perceiving this," and you just think to yourself, "That can't be. That's just too darn easy."
Yeah, I've done that. A lot.
With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Do join us for the second half of this episode in next week's podcast. Namaste, Goddess blessings, love yous.
Hey girl, where you been? I really, really wanna know. Where you been? I really, really wanna know. Where you been? I really, really wanna know. Where you been, girl? This ain't no mystery, don't want no ancient.
Race 2 is an album from Eon MC and The Libra. Get it now.
What's a present you can open over and over and over again? You got it right, a book. Check out Magic of the Ancients, Wisdom from the Stars by Jenny Clark on Amazon.